Thanks for tuning in to another episode of From Funding to Fame, where we interview the founders and funders currently raising capital on FrontFundr, as well as experts in the private capital markets. I'm your host, Trieste Redding, the head of campaigns at FrontFundr, and I'm excited to introduce more Canadians to equity crowdfunding. This podcast episode features conversations about a business's current operations and future plans, and as a result may contain forward-looking information. There can be no assurance that forward-looking information will prove to be accurate, as actual results and future events could differ materially from those anticipated in such statements. Listeners should not place undue reliance on forward-looking information. Today we are here with the founder, CEO, CTO of AIRmarket, Lindsay Mohr. AIRmarket is Canada's first RPAS registered management RTM service supplier, shaping the future of air traffic control for drones. They are a trusted partner of Transport Canada and NAV Canada. Since its founding, AIRmarket has established a network of 12 infrastructure sites and a clear commercial path forward through its 45-plus partners in the IART Alliance. Here are some highlights. AIRmarket has been awarded $2.3 million in non-dilutive funding by the Government of Alberta to establish its network in the province. The company generated $2.48 million in revenue in 2024, growing at a 50% compound annual growth rate since 2021. AIRmarket aims to empower the more than 107,000 licensed drone pilots operating 127,000 registered drones to fly beyond visual line of sight and safely integrate into the national airspace. Fully aligned with the new Beyond Visual Line of Sight regulations coming in 2025, AIRmarket services are designed to fast-track the growth of the commercial drone industry. Hi, Lindsay. Thanks so much for being here. Welcome to From Funding to Fame. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me today. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very excited to learn more about your background as well as AIRmarket as a company and investment opportunity. So just as we kick things off today, maybe you can introduce yourself and share a little bit about what your career has looked like to date on that journey to AIRmarket.
Yeah. Well, I would shape myself as a pretty typical Alberta boy. First 20 years on the family farm. Then had to make a decision. My dad kind of steered me in the direction of, hey, you should go to oil and gas. And so I spent another just under 20 years with Royal Dutch Shell, otherwise known as Shell, and started off as an operator. But my last 8 years, I got to spend it in innovation. And I was able to bring in innovation across Shell's different businesses, upstream, downstream. And that's where I kind of stumbled on to my third career, which is drones. And so that's where I seen that drones would be utilized as enterprise tools, kind of like a compressor or a heat exchanger. Drones would be used by enterprise, not only by oil and gas, but agriculture, forestry, and now I can see public safety. Tools. Those drones are going to be a tool that's used every single day, and fortunately, unfortunately, we can kind of hear that in the news every single day as well, right? From European battlegrounds, drones are being pulled into our everyday life and our lexicon. And so that's when I transitioned fully to AIRmarket in 2018. And but the other part that I'll talk about is we really jumped into the regulatory development side of things. Understanding that drones needed to find a foundation in our regulatory framework is something that I discovered and jumped into that with 2 feet. And I've been working in that space with the regulatory framework inside of Canada, working on a number of action committees, a number of sub-working groups. And so providing that thought leadership and being the voice of industry is kind of where I'll kind of brings my career towards now in 2025, is being the voice of a burgeoning industry that is a new entrant to the airspace in Canada. And so to using Carney's words, elbows up, trying to get drones into the airspace and giving our right standing, from connectivity to electronic conspicuity, being able to see drones and having the same rights. That's kind of where my career has taken me towards now.
That's great. I appreciate the overview there. I think you can definitely see the kind of natural progression or opportunity identification having worked in oil and gas. And I think we're seeing more and more drones, having the ability to do pipeline inspections and other things. But to your point, there's a certain maybe regulatory framework there that's been a little late to kind of development with how many drones are now in the airspace. And I think we've even seen, at different international airports and stuff, how drones can create problems if they're not being managed properly and things like that. So would love to hear a bit more of kind of the overview of what it is that AIRmarket does within that framework and being able to provide more oversight there. So maybe you can give us just a bit of an overview or kind of that elevator pitch on what it is that AIRmarket does.
Yeah, good segue. I think the way we have started shaping AIRmarket is a baby Nav Canada. That's what we think of AIRmarket, and to kind of explain that, it helps to explain the path that Canada has taken to advance general aviation. I like using it's a good Edmontonian as well, Max Ward. Max Ward founded, that Bush pilot mantra in the 50s, come back from the war, established Bush pilot operations and ferrying equipment and people into the north, unlocking mining towns, the due north line, and so he established those routes, commercial routes, and he was supported by Transport Canada at the time, establishing air traffic control services in Vancouver, Edmonton, Yellowknife, and they safely allowed him to operate commercial services. And so that continued on through the 50s and 60s, and our network of surveillance and air traffic control and that foundation grew and grew and grew to be able to support commercial operations. What happened though is in the 90s is Canada, the government started to learn, hey, we need to reinvest and we need to extend capabilities. We need to have more surveillance across the Atlantic because there's bigger commercial airplanes, big commercial opportunities. And so we needed to reinvest in the infrastructure, and they had a problem being able to get that investment. So they spun off a company called Nav Canada. And so Nav Canada operates the airspace and the infrastructure on behalf of the industry. And it's easier for them to generate, investment and bring that infrastructure to the fold because they're not a government, no partisan, just politics. Now, fast forward, Nav Canada has realized that to be able to usher in this next phase of development that drones are going to need, there's going to need to be investment and it's going to have to be driven. They want to see third-party service suppliers come to the table to be able to make the investments and support the airspace. And so that's where companies like AIRmarket are going out, making the investments to put in surveillance for listening to where crewed aviation are, being able to put up an augment C2 and connectivity services, and then really driving that interface to give the services to companies or organizations like the County of Strathcona or the city of Edmonton to be able to establish their drone as a first responder program, for example, in advantaged airspace. And so, this companies, service suppliers are going to need to be able to go out, instrument the airspace, and enable enterprise pilots and government agencies to be able to take advantage of the airspace and deliver drone services that they see serving the public or their commercial needs. So that's where it comes back. AIRmarket will be a baby Nav Canada. Uh, but that is expected to grow over the course of the next 25 years. We predict this to be a $5.4 billion industry, and we expect to see 250,000 drones flying every single day across Canada. And that's going to enable many, many things in our economy. It's going to reduce our costs, but more importantly, reduce our carbon footprint and transform many different verticals in the economy. Am I making sense with that?
No, absolutely. I think that was a great overview of, what the company does, what it's intending to do, and also really appreciate the example that you brought in there with kind of how Nav Canada was developed and spun out. So I think that's a great overview there. I know you mentioned you've kind of been working on this since 2018. I know for a fact you've had some different pilot projects over the years as well. So given that you're kind of introducing this new framework in the skies for drones, what's it been like finding those, what were some of those initial hurdles that you might have faced and kind of taking this off the ground and, getting more exposure and finding those partners? What were some of those early days like?
Well, it started off in 18, there wasn't a strategy at the national level. And so in late 2019, Transport and Nav said, "Hey, we want to organize and we want to engage." And so that's when the first RTM Action Committee was stood up. And so we participated. I participated in that. Every second month or so, traveling to Ottawa and interfacing and building the relationships and understanding kind of assembling the industry. And so in late 2020, that group came forward with the idea of, hey, we need to learn. We need to learn by doing. And so that gave rise to the call for proposals, the RTM phase one, and they envision phase two proposals. AIRmarket, and TELUS and TC Energy, we applied for the first round of trials and we got selected. And to your point, we focused on trying to get a 110-pound drone to be able to fly long distances up to 80 kilometers away. And so we worked through the regulatory process to get that aircraft accepted, a command and control connectivity accepted, deploy our surveillance systems, and gain acceptance for that drone to fly. We absolutely did that. But we've learned regulators, the Nav Canada, the industry, we all learned as part of that process.
Mhm.
And then phase two of the trials, we applied again, and we were the only company that got selected for both one and phase two of the trials. And so we were focused on the next generation of aircraft that we selected and getting that to fly on in wildfire scenarios and in long linear inspections. We've recently turned our focus now to public safety, being able to conduct drone operations to support drone as a first responder. That's what we're laser focused on now. Growing since 2020, all those learning activities and joint learning activities. Now we're focused on drone in a box that is going to enable the County of Strathcona to respond to every single one of their calls for service in Sherwood Park with a drone. And their vision is to be able to, right now they send two big trucks, two big fire trucks to every one of their calls. The inspiration is they want to send a drone within 10 seconds of getting that call, dispatch a drone and send the truck. And that drone will provide real-time situational awareness to the truck on its way to the dispatch people and to their leadership. And that will allow them to more effectively deploy their resources and reduce their carbon footprint in doing so. And our plan here is to scale that across to the city of Edmonton as well, and enable um, their use cases for public safety. It's a
Wow, that's a
long response there.
No, it's great. It's really interesting to hear about the vertical that you guys are moving into. I think that's a very fascinating use case, and you can absolutely see the value there of getting a drone to the scene first to evaluate the situation and basically report back to the team that's on their way on kind of what those immediate needs and concerns are that need to be addressed right away. They can then prepare themselves. So, yeah, that's a very interesting pilot program that you guys have underway.
One point to make on that too is Transport Canada sees that as well. They
Yeah,
are prioritizing and giving advantages to emergency response and public safety use cases. And so they have a special flight approval to grant these types of organizations. So, and that's in all Canadians' best interest, is to
yeah.
enable public safety and accelerate that. And so the flow on to that will be, get those guys flying, assess give the value, and then allow and enable the commercial side of things to be nurtured as a result of that.
That's fantastic. No, I appreciate the overview there. I think that's like I said, a great showcase of kind of the value of that use case and what AIRmarket can bring to the table there. So, would love to hear a little bit more, maybe about kind of the company's mission, the solution as a whole. I know you've talked on a couple verticals that can really leverage this. Given you kind of are working to safely integrate drones into Canadian airspace, you've got that scalable long range BVLOS operations through real time, automated airspace management. There's a lot of complexities to managing, I would imagine, all of the regulatory and technical barriers with that as well. So would love to hear a little bit about not only what you are doing, but also what sets you apart from kind of any other players in the space? Are there other players in the space? Like, how is it that AIRmarket is different from anything else available in the market right now?
Well, that's an interesting topic to get into. Is we are actually inviting competitors to come and work with us in Edmonton, and in Alberta. And the reason is we need to set the ecosystem. Someone has to
Mm,
be the leader to set up the ecosystem and make it functional. Okay.
yeah.
Um, and so I'll say our colleagues, our friends at NAV Canada are setting up a centralized service that will be used to support the RTM, or RPAS Traffic Management service suppliers like AIRmarket and like OneSky, who we've invited to the market to come and integrate. So we're
Hmm.
going to have AIRmarket is going out and setting up surveillance. We're going to be standing up equipment that surveils the airspace and is able to track any aircrafts that are in the airspace. We're standing up aviation radios and other transmission devices to basically instrument this airspace. And in a very Canadian way, I would say, is we're going to share that data,
Hmm.
and we're going to share that and make it available. And our competition, who is OneSky, we're cooperating, I'll say, is, they will be able to use that data and information to be able to provide a similar service to what we're going to provide. But the more important part here is it's going to be able to interface. We're going to be able to share data and effectively demonstrate that service suppliers can effectively manage the airspace as the regulatory and Transport Canada and NAV Canada has envisioned. And so we're stepping out in front of those centralized services that NAV is setting up over the course of the next 2 to 3 years. We're going to start building the community and interoperating. And then when NAV Canada has their central services, we expect and hope and plan to just naturally merge onto those centralized services. So AIRmarket is working to effectively provide the thought leadership and to organize and establish the ecosystem that the regulatory and NAV Canada has envisioned. So that's kind of where we sit. Am I making sense when I explain it like that?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of framing it. It's often different when you're obviously building a market than just entering an existing market. And I think as you illustrated very well there, you're really working on building that entire ecosystem and framework for everyone to be able to leverage in the future. So it makes sense to set that up in a way where you're working together with other providers to really build this as a whole so that individual companies will be able to thrive into the future there as well.
Yeah, we're trying to establish a reference architecture. And that this, as anyone that has worked in aviation, it's really truly an ecosystem, right? You have to have pilots that can fly aircraft, and you need, the air traffic control
Yep.
services to be able to safely integrate all of that together. And so that's one thing that's been missing when we started in 2020 is, aircraft that will meet the regulatory or the performance requirements of the regulator, and the regulator is just kind of learning at the same time. So
Mm,
industries coming up together, and
yep.
this work that we do in Edmonton is going to be the first real true operational implementation, which can be control C, control V, brought to other parts of Canada, and just replicated, once we gain the initial regulatory approvals.
Absolutely. I know you've touched on this a little bit already, but just in perhaps understanding a little bit more of what that market opportunity that exists, maybe you can share a little bit more about the different verticals that you foresee being able to leverage this into the future, and yeah, what you think that market either across Canada or beyond might look like for AIRmarket as a company.
So maybe I'll kind of pose it in two parts responses. Imagine, Trias, if you were a drone pilot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the coming months you will be. If you were a drone pilot and you wanted to monitor fire, okay,
Yep.
you wanted to see it. You want to make sure that you stay connected with that drone, right? You want to make sure that
Yep.
the entire time you send that drone out 5 or 10 kilometers away, you want to have a rock solid connectivity with it. Kind of like you want to do on your mobile phone, right? You want to make sure
Mm-hmm.
you have connectivity. You also want to know where is there other aircrafts, crewed aircrafts or drones in that vicinity? Is it something that I could possibly hit? So, and then you want to be able to submit your flight plan and say, hey, I plan to fly here for this period of time. And
Yeah.
so that's what we ultimately broker on your behalf is those three things. So who can take advantage of that? Um, you know, as I talked about, is public safety. That's a huge opportunity we see
Mm-hmm.
there. We can envision that, wildfire is a big thing. We
For
think
sure.
that, situational awareness, whether you're a small municipality like Sangudo, Alberta, or a big municipality like Calgary or Ottawa, um, you're going to want to have situational awareness. You want to have tools. So we can see in the future where there will be drone in a boxes that will be used to respond to, events, flooding, floods, or fires, or public demonstrations, any kind of civil activities there. And so from big cities to small municipalities, we can see drone in the box being able to address public safety. Of course, fixed asset inspection is a big thing. We have miles and miles of railways, of pipelines, of
Mm-hmm.
power lines, and that all has a regulatory requirement to be inspected. and it's being inspected to date. Um, Underpinning in that, the other couple of use cases is wildfire. Unfortunately, it's just a
Yep.
natural evolution. We are battling more wildfires, and to be able to bring automation, we see that on the foreground. We're going to be announcing some announcements here shortly to talk about automation in wildfire and enabling that. And then coinciding with that is, agriculture. We can see that drones are being readily adopted by the agricultural community, being able to automate and target the application of pesticides and herbicides and fertilizer. And so that's an industry that we see actively coming on quite rapidly as well, with the public safety aspects. So that's touched on a lot of things, but public safety, wildfire, fixed asset inspection. Those are all key things that we see emerging in the Canadian market, which is where we're laser focused on delivering.
Yeah, I can absolutely see the value across those use cases. I think being from BC, and I know how familiar it is in Alberta as well with the wildfires each summer, and you can just imagine how much value it can provide for those different teams to be able to fly drones, to understand, full coverage area, what they're getting into, what it looks like, where they need to be focusing on. So yeah, can definitely see the use cases across this country being quite plentiful within those different verticals there. Now, shifting the focus a little bit, for investors who might be listening today, would love to learn a little bit more specifically, kind of how AIRmarket monetizes what you do. Kind of, what does that business model look like for investors to be able to understand how the company intends to make money or does make money?
You bet. That there's two aspects to our business model. The first part is subscription to our FlySafe
Hmm.
product, that provides the foundational compliance. And as you probably on your last flight, you're boarding the plane, and you could see in the little cockpit, you could see two pilots going through checklists and making sure that everything's safe and right. That was compliance. That's aircraft compliance. That's the foundation of which we build our FlySafe product on. And so we offer that through subscriptions. And so we have already about 15 private label servers, and having different customers there. Now, what's going to be enabled as part of the new regulations that drop and come into full effect in November 4th, 2025, is beyond visual line of sight. And so we will offer command and control or connectivity with your drone, surveillance of the airspace, and approval and access to airspace. And so we can see that will be offered on three different tiers: small, medium, and large. And we can see that first tier will be somewhere between 50 cents and $1. The next tier will be $2 to $5, and then that last tier, $5 to $10. And that's the advanced air mobility, that's air taxis, and that's the future, I'll say. The reality is the market will be in those first two tiers. And so we've looked at this and assessed this, and based on those market weightings, we anticipate an average of $2.39 a minute that people will pay. Pilots, enterprise pilots, and government agency pilots will pay to per minute of flight time. So,
Hmm.
you take off and you fly, and every minute that you're in the airspace, you're paying. And so that will give them the ability to go and conduct the use cases that they want to do, and will be able to do it safely, efficiently, and in total compliance with the regulations. And so that's the vision that we built with Transport Canada and Nav Canada, and that's the strategy that they've communicated. And now we're working here in Edmonton to be the first implementation of that and the first demonstration of that. And so we are going to use the calendar year of 2025 and 2026 to roll this out, deploy it, gain regulatory acceptance, and then in 2027 we plan to have the first drones, commercial drones, under our system at that point in time.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate you outlining business model, how it works, how it will work into the future. I know you've touched on throughout already some of kind of the great partnerships or working relationships that you have with Nav Canada, Transport Canada. You've done different pilot programs over the years as well. Maybe you can give us more insight into what the company's traction has been to date. I know you've got some great, like I said, pilot programs under your belt, and what the company's plans are for continued growth and development into the future as well. You've alluded to it, but would love to hear a little bit more on, yeah, the traction the company has seen so far and where you're headed with that as well.
Yeah, good question. Coming out of the first phase of the trials that started in 2020, we went into phase two of the trials, and what we decided to do is to build what we call the IART Alliance. So that's the Alberta RTM Trials Alliance. And so we've built a consortium, an industry-led consortium, and it has a number of different companies, technology service suppliers that we're testing and working with, the regulatory agencies, airports in Alberta, drone service supplier companies, academia, they're involved. And so more and more organizations, there's first started off about 40 in mid 2024, and we're above 50 organizations that are actively involved and participating in the IART Alliance. And that we're bringing that group to Edmonton, and that's growing as we attract more and more people. And so, who will want to come to this space? Well, we have a sandbox that is gaining, going to get acceptance. And so, service supplier companies like SmartFleet, we just talked to this week. We had them come in, and they want to be able to build an aircraft that is Canadian built and fits into the regulatory regime. Well, they are absolutely enthused to be able to work in that. There is a consortium that they can work with that is lined up with the regulatory framework and is helping to define the reference architecture. And so they're one example. The County of Strathcona, the City of Edmonton are other examples that are coming in to work in our consortium. And so this provides the kind of the commercial pathway, if you will, to be able to expand out. We can anticipate once the county and the city is flying every single day here in the fall, that municipalities across Canada will come here and see a drone in a box from Station 1 and Station 6 lifting off every hour, and they'll be able to understand how do they get it done for their jurisdiction. And so showing, deploying, doing, and then getting approval, that is our path forward. And I think it's evident in the traction that we have, that I've just communicated, and it is available on the our website. We publish who's all officially signed up and participating, and that's been made available, and also the traction on the timeline of the IART as well.
No, I appreciate the insights there. I think one thing that I like too with your campaign is you guys are communicating very often too about these different pilot programs and you're running and initiatives and things like that. So for investors who are kind of wanting real-time updates on the progress you guys are making, there's a great timeline there of information as well, which is fantastic to see. But would love to shift the focus a little bit to yourself, Lindsay, as kind of, founder and leader of the company. I know within your background, you go from working in a very established industry of oil oil and gas. You kind of take on that innovation sector now. Now you're really working on kind of building a market and industry, which is a different domain completely. So would love to hear a little bit more about kind of your philosophy on leadership and how you bring kind of a sense of motivation to your team. It's certainly not easy being that market building company. So how do you go about leading the team on such a big initiative like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's probably a hockey analogy, like a Ryan Smith, declaration. Just do by leading, lead by doing. I guess a better way to say it. I much rather be out in the field with the sticks or climbing a tower, and showing what we need to do. But you can do that for a while, but you need to be able to transfer that knowledge. You need to be able to expand that across not only to your immediate team, but to the industry.
Hmm.
And so it is my personal trajectory has been up and down. Being able to talk about a high level summary idea and concept, and then being able to go down into the weeds. And the other way I like to explain it is someone has to dig the puck out of the corner in the hockey rink, and I like to go into the corner, try to beat the defenseman, and gain a little separation, and then feed that puck to Yari Curry, who's sitting in the slot, and he takes the shot, puts it in the net. So, in summary, high level strategy, but you got to be able to go down and dig in the weeds and
Yeah.
do, and then bring that information up and disseminate it across, your team, your industry peers, and then nationally. That's how we've been, or I've been trying to build the company, and gain acceptance for us.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate the analogy. I think there's nothing more Canadian than chatting about hockey, and talked about elbows up this episode as well. So love the spirit there. But yeah, absolutely. I think leading by doing is key, and being able to transfer that knowledge is critical in establishing not only a great team, but also to build out the industry, like you've mentioned there. Now, a question I always love to just ask founders is if along your journey so far, there's maybe been either a defining moment when everything kind of seemed to change or take a significant turn, or perhaps even just like a favorite memory that you've had with the company so far that stands out to you.
I would say there's a couple.
Yep.
As a founder, you kind of struggle with your market and where you want to, what do you want to solve. One moment that stood out is working with Ibrahim Gideon from TELUS. We originally reached out, and I originally seen in a presentation Ibrahim did, and he showed connected cars and drones, and talked to that future that TELUS had or has a vision on. And I approached him and said, "Hey, I'm looking at small company startup, and we're wanting to solve air traffic control for drones." And he took the card and he's like, "I'm going to talk to you later in a couple months." And he did. And so, having that validation that there is a problem we're solving, that stands out. And having someone in a senior role say, "Hey, we want to work with you, and we see value in your vision." So that's one thing. And then I'd say the other part is when Nav and Transport Canada had made the announcement on the RTM ecosystem concept of operations. Late November of 2023, 3 years of work, basically of being a liaison, industry liaison, and shepherding and stewarding and being part of the community, contributing. That kind of it all came out of the vision. There's many people that contributed into that, but I always uh, participated and contributed and invested. That's the better word. I invested into that,
Hmm.
and it was, it. led the industry forward, and it legitimized the direction and the vision that AIRmarket put forward. And now we're kind of, now that the new regulations for beyond visual line of sight were announced in March. I'd say that's the last tipping point. It's a very, very, very clear direction around beyond visual line of sight. And we now have a path to gain regulatory acceptance. And so those three profound things kind of anchor the journey that is Lindsay Mohr and AIRmarket, and puts us on a good footing to execute and deliver on that.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing those stories there. I think those are some kind of excellent milestones across the company's journey, building off of the TELUS conversation and your um, impact there with Ibrahim. Would love to kind of segue that into talking about your funding journey, because that's how we initially met as companies all the way back in 2021, doing a really interesting pilot program with TELUS there. So would love to hear more about just what the company's experience, fundraising so far has been with perhaps the program that we did, your fundraising outside of that, and then we can get to a little bit how that's brought you to the company's raise that we have ongoing today.
Yeah. Again, being the scrappy Canadians, we have a. It's funny. You look at Canada, and we're very community minded, and that is really exemplified by TELUS. So EBM came up with this idea. Hey, we got a great group of people that like technology, and they like to be involved. And hey, we've got these companies that we're working with that are innovative and new, and they got new ideas. So they started a crowdfunding initiative that was spearheaded by Ibrahim. And so they brought a consortium or a cohort of companies together in 2021. And AIRmarket I think we led the development or the deployment, the initiative, and we raised just under $800,000 from 968 TELUS employees back in November of 2021. And so that kind of set the foundation gave us experience, understanding of the crowdfunding initiative. And then that kind of spearheaded us into the latest round, the round that we kicked off in May this year. That's round two. And so we have raised to date about 75,000 and roughly 80 investors. And some of them we initially offered an early bird special to those TELUS employees that invested us in the first round, and now we're opened it up to everyone across Canada, and opened up the opportunity that is currently active right now today. And so yeah, we've built a track record on funding the company through the Mohr family, who made early investments, but then the TELUS family of employees, and now it's kind of scaled out to Canadians, the crowdfunding pool across Canada.
Yeah, I love how you mentioned kind of the community focus there. We are certainly as a country very community driven, and this is a form of fundraising that really reinforces that. And there's really never been a stronger time to be supporting Canadian, investing in Canadian innovation. So it's great to now be broadening that audience. And I think looking back at your 2021 campaign, at that time there was actually slightly different crowdfunding legislation, and rather than up to raising up to $1.5 million from retail investors under the current exemption, it was kind of 250K raises that you could do in a calendar year. And I remember at that time, you were the first campaign that we had to hit that maximum within like a week. It was crazy how much excitement there was from the TELUS employees around the opportunity, and really just speaks to what you guys are doing that are so innovative, and you have that backing from a bunch of individuals who are working in that tech space and want to see that innovation come to life, which is great. So it's exciting to see where we're at now, going moving forward with this next campaign for you guys to help bring the company to the next level, and now really broadening the scope of that to the entire Canadian market, which is really great. So it's nice to see. As we're looking to kind of wrap things up here today, always just love to hear from founders if there's kind of a quote or a piece of advice, maybe even a hockey analogy that's kind of guided you through your entrepreneurial journey so far.
Yeah, well, I'd say if you want something done right, do it yourself. Make sure you can do it yourself
Yeah.
to begin with,
Yeah.
and then learn and understand, and then kind of disseminate that out, that knowledge. If you can't do it, if you can't do it, then how can you expect anyone else to do it? So yeah, it's kind of a guiding principle for us here at AIRmarket, and the culture that I want to bring forward.
Kind of the walk the talk, don't just talk the talk, right? Like you gotta be able to do it yourself. Totally agree.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Now, as we wrap up here today, for those investors who are listening, if you could leave them with three things to take away about AIRmarket, what would they be?
I think we're focused on public safety to begin with, and laser focused on that. Uh, I also think that Canada, Mark Carney's decision to up our spend in defense is absolutely profound, and I know that we will benefit because of that.
Hmm.
um, and that's gonna help us as Canadians, and we need to gain that independence from our southern friends.
Hmm.
And the last thing that I'll leave us with is, we're real. We're very, very real. 2027, the switch is going to flip, and we are going to be the utility for the airspace. Just like you use electricity and your appliances, AIRmarket will be used to access airspace, and it's a regulatory requirement. So excited to have and extend our pool of over 1,000 investors, and buy into the journey, and the future is friendly here.
Well, I really appreciate that, Lindsay. Thank you so much for being here today. For the investors listening who want to learn more, you can do so at frontfundr.com/airmarket. AirMarket's got some great information on their campaign page, about the traction to date. There's an excellent video there. And as I mentioned, they've been doing a great job keeping investors just updated on all kind of the evolution with your pilot programs and stuff like that you have underway. So definitely recommend that you check that out. And yeah, Lindsay, it's been great chatting. I know we've known each other for quite a while. It's great to see how AIRmarket has progressed, where you guys are at today, and where you're headed as well. So really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today.
Thank you so much, Teresa.
For anyone new to the podcast, FrontFundr is Canada's leading equity crowdfunding platform, enabling all Canadians to invest in the most exciting startups and growth stage companies, something that was previously only available to the 1%. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter so you can have your questions answered in an upcoming episode. This podcast episode is for informational purposes only and should not constitute financial advice. Investors should conduct their own due diligence on any investment they may be considering on FrontFundr. For details of any offering listed on FrontFundr, refer to the offering document on their campaign page at www.frontfundr.com.